Yo, what's up guys? Grim here. So I've had a lot of people ask me about like what do I leave behind and what do I pick up in PoE? And there's actually quite a easy way to explain this. So today's video is going to be about what to loot and when. So to start off with, there's just a couple basic rules we need to understand about like what we want to be picking up in PoE. So rule number one is that you never want to loot something which isn't worth at least one chaos to other players. And what I mean by that is, so when we go to a website like PoE Trade and we look up an item, that it's going to be worth at least one chaos on average to buy from other players, because that means we can sell it for one chaos. Um, there is one exception to this though. If you personally need the item, like if you're starting out in like Act 1 or 2 or 3, any of the early acts, and you kind of need a new ring or something, you should be picking up rings so you can replace your ring. But otherwise, when you get to endgame and you've kind of got your gear set out, then you only want to be picking up stuff with at least one or more chaos. Um, However, there is one slight variation on that rule, and that is if the items that are dropping can be sold in bulk or really quickly. And a few examples of this are like white leather belts, rare rings, and rare amulets, unidentified, and maybe some breach splinters, then it's worth picking those up as well because they're really easy. You can stack them up and then just trade them all to one player really efficiently and fast for like a bunch of orbs of alchemy or something. I know that that's one thing that a lot of people don't do is pick up the unID'd rare and amulets and rings, because you can actually sell those to players doing the chaos recipe for one alchemy each. But anyway, yeah, if you can pick it up and it's worth at least an alchemy and you can sell it in bulk, it's also worth picking up as well. So just real quickly, like everyone's like probably like, but if I pick up less stuff, I'm making less money. Um, so I'm gonna explain why that isn't the case. So as you can see in this footage behind me, I'm going really fast. I'm only picking up a few things, and that's allowing me to spawn more high value currency items like Chaos Orbs, Exalted Orbs, and stuff like that. So the more maps you do more quickly, the more Exalted Orbs and like chase uniques you're gonna get. But if I spend a lot of time picking up like rare like helmets and chest pieces and stuff and identifying them back in my hideout, then I'm going to be doing less maps overall and get less exalted orb drops. So it's all about min-maxing how much you can leave behind, but also how much you want to pick up. You want to kind of make sure that you're spending the most time killing monsters as possible. So just moving on, I'm going to show you really quickly what I pick up and what I don't pick up in terms of like currency items, and I'll give you a few pointers on what uniques to pick up. So I'll just bring up a spreadsheet I made for you guys earlier. Um, so this is going to be a really good resource for you guys to check out when you're kind of like trying to figure out what to pick up at what point in the game. So from Acts 1 to 10, I generally recommend picking up almost every single type of currency item apart from Wisdom and Portal Scrolls because they'll be really useful in helping you craft that really early game gear and maybe get a few like Wisdom and Portal Scrolls to like get you further and quicker like in terms of like transportation. Like let's say you need a bigger flask that costs 3 wisdom scrolls in the beginning, and if you weren't picking up an armorer's scrap to vendor for wisdom scrolls, then you wouldn't be able to buy that. So yeah, you kind of want to be picking up everything while you're doing the story. If you're going really fast and you kind of want to min-max it, you can kind of leave out all of these ones here. But in general, you want to be picking up everything that's green, everything that's kind of like in the brown here, and leaving out what's in the red. I'll actually swap these colors over so it's a little bit easier to see. That's better. Um, and when you use maps, you kind of want to be excluding a few more of these currencies so you can kind of start going a little bit faster. So in general, you want to be not picking up wisdom scrolls, portal scrolls, really armor scraps, or anything which is kind of a lower amount of currency. Because basically the theory is that you can just buy those in bulk, like off other players. So one chaos orb might be worth like 20 orbs of transmutation. And in the time that you pick up all those orbs of transmutation, you could have run a whole map and gotten like 2 chaos orbs worth of stuff. So yeah, you want to be kind of like excluding everything that's in red here, and then everything that's in the yellow here is kind of questionable. Like chromatic orbs can be really useful, like really early on in the league, if you need to like color a really hard item. Like a lot of chess pieces can be quite difficult to get the right colors for your build. So if you actually really need them, then chromatic orbs might not be a bad idea to pick up. And then moving on like further into the league, like 1 or 2 weeks onwards, you kind of want to be excluding almost all of these currencies to some degree in the red here because it's just not worth picking them up. You could just do a whole map in the time it would take you to pick up all these little tiny bits of currency, and then you can just buy all those currency you would have picked up with a Chaos Orb of other players. So yeah, you kind of want to be following this, and I would recommend plugging this into a loot filter, which you can find on a website called Filterblade, which I'll have a link to this spreadsheet and Filterblade in the description for you guys. In terms of rares, my playstyle, I personally don't pick up any rares apart from unidentified rings and amulets, sometimes belts, although they're not very popular, and white leather belts. And the reason behind that is, as I said before, you can sell the rings and amulets in bulk, like I'm talking a full inventory to people doing the chaos recipe and get like 30 alchemies from that. So that's really, really it's a quick trade. Sometimes they like want hundreds of them, so you can kind of offload a full quad tab of them to someone, and you can make a lot of currency that way, where you would have been missing out otherwise. In terms of white leather belts, the reason people want these is because they want a chance to headhunt leather belt, which is the best item in the game currently. So on average, from what I understand, the headhunter takes 10,000 to 15,000 white leather belts to craft on average. So there's a huge demand for like white leather belts. So often they can be sold for an alchemy each, or maybe sometimes a little bit less, sometimes more, depending on how popular clear speed builds are in the meta. So yeah, white leather belts, rings and amulets are really good to pick up. Everything else is just if you kind of need it or are after it, or if you kind of like the playstyle of kind of finding a really cool rare item, then you can go for that too. But ultimately, it will actually slow you down and potentially lose you a bit of currency in the long run. So in terms of vendor recipes, there's a few very important ones, and that's the quality gem one and the six socket item. In terms of how much money you'll make from maps, a lot of it is actually from six socket items. I would say 25 to 30% of your overall currency you make from maps is actually from just six socket item dropping. So you want to pick up all of these. They drop a lot. Like we're talking like one to two on average, maybe a map. Sometimes you won't get one, but sometimes you'll get lots. So yeah, you want to be picking up all of these. And then quality gems. So this one takes up a really small amount of space in your inventory and bank, and you can kind of grab them all and vendor them to the vendor at once. So basically, what these do is if you pick up a quality gem, which is a skill gem, which has the percentage quality on it, it'll be called superior. And if you vendor gems in combination which equal 20% quality, so you could have an 11% skill gem and a 9%, that equals 20, you will get a gem cutter prism. And gem cutter prisms are always going to be in demand because it costs a lot of GCPs, which is what they're called for short, to get all of your gems to 20%. And in addition to that, there's an even higher demand for them because once people get a gem to level 20%, they want to use a Vile Orb on it to try and get it to be a 21-20 gem. So this is always going to be a very profitable thing to do. It doesn't give you a ton of currency, but it's very like quick to do and doesn't take up a lot of room. So I would highly recommend these two. There is one more, the chromatic item recipe. If you're really like hurting for chromatics, you can pick up items which have a red socket, green socket, and blue socket all linked together, and vendor that to the vendor for a chromatic orb. But personally, this one's not very good to do after like the first day, in my opinion. You can just buy the chromatic orbs of other players. Um, so I touched briefly on like a few league specific items. So like I'm talking like breach splinters, harbinger orbs, ancient orbs, all of this kind of stuff. It's kind of changes on a league to league basis, but in the current Harbinger League, you want to be picking up all of the fragments which are worth at least an alchemy. So that means Harbinger fragments, Ancient Orb fragments, and Exalt fragments. I think that's all of the ones that I pick up. I can't tell you for sure, but like stuff like Alteration fragments, Transmute fragments, all of these kind of things, even Alchemy and Chaos fragments, you don't want to be picking those up at all. They're not really worth it in the grand scheme of things. They're just going to slow you down and clutter up your inventory and stuff like that. So don't pick those up. A good way to tell if it's worth picking something up or not is to just go on PoE Trade again and kind of just look at what the going price is for it. And if it's like below an alc or it's really difficult to sell, don't pick it up. In terms of uniques, this is where a lot of players will like new players will waste a lot of time. They'll pick up all of the uniques that drop on the floor, and sometimes you can get like three or four a map or more if you've rolled the map kind of crazily. So it's kind of difficult. Like it comes with experience, really. So what I've said here is that you want to just pick them all up to begin with and learn the kind of art that goes along with each unique and whether that unique is worth money or not. Because in PoE, if you hover over the unique item on the ground, you can actually see whether it's going to be a worthwhile item or not. It shows you the art of the unique item. So you can actually learn to identify which uniques are worth money on the ground and which aren't. So, to give you an example, a leather belt, it could be a headhunter leather belt, or it could be a worm's malt. Worm's malt is worth an alc, headhunter is worth 80 exalts. So, learning to differentiate between the two is really, really important. It just comes with experience. So, yeah, pick them all up, check PoE trade, and make sure that you're not losing out on currency or picking up stuff that's not worth it. So yeah, if you kind of follow these basic rules, you should be able to like kind of speed up your gameplay a lot. You should get a lot more maps done, and you should be getting more currency overall, compared to when you were picking up everything like wisdom, portal scrolls, armor scraps, and stuff like that. You can just buy those for other players. I hope this helped a little bit at least. I would highly recommend going in and making your own loot filter personally so that you get it exactly how you want. Loot filters are perhaps like the biggest kind of addition to clear speed that you can get, like apart from obviously upgrading your character and stuff like that. It's super duper important to have a really good one. So yeah, I spend like hours and hours on my loot filter. I exclude all kinds of things like and make sure that I include all the good uniques and exclude some of the bad uniques and stuff like that. So yeah, spend a bit of time on it, learn all the uniques to pick up, and I hope you guys start making a lot more money after learning what to pick up and what not to. Thanks for watching. I do stream on Twitch most days. If you have any questions, I recommend heading over and asking me. I love questions, and make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot.